There was a time when superhero movies made $1 billion at the box office like it was nothing. A Joker movie without Batman? $1 billion. A movie about a guy who talks to fish? $1 billion film. A movie about a character nobody seems to like? Still $1 billion. Billion, 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 2 billion, almost 3 billion. But since 2020, only 2 movies have hit those numbers. And even movies that were loved by fans, critics, and casual viewers, like The Batman, Gun's Superman, Thunderbolts, or Fantastic Four, didn't even come close to $1 billion. There are 3 reasons this is happening. The first one is that the momentum from 2019 with the release of Endgame is gone. This is a big deal, because out of the 16 superhero movies that ever hit $1 billion, half of them came out between 2018 and 2019. Back then, everyone suddenly became a superhero fan, and the whole genre turned into a trend, even among people who didn't even know who Iron Man was. Superheroes went beyond pop culture and reached casual audiences like your cousin and your aunt, who used to laugh at you for wearing a superhero shirt. I have friends who ran to see Endgame during the first week just because everyone was doing it, but they hadn't seen the previous movies. This kind of mass event is just like what happens every February with the Super Bowl, which pulls in the hardcore fans who watch several games a day, the ones who go to the stadium every week, the ones who only follow their own team, and even the people who aren't really into football but just wanna catch the halftime show. But just like the Super Bowl, you can't keep that level of hype going forever. Marvel took 2 of its biggest characters off the board, and the last Avengers movie literally had the word "and" in the title, so a lot of people saw that as the perfect moment to jump off ride, because they felt like they'd seen enough. Now they only come back when there's fan service or nostalgia, like with No Way Home or Deadpool and Wolverine. But this drop in hype didn't just hit Marvel, it hit the whole superhero genre. Sure, it can be fun to argue with random people online about whether Marvel or DC is better, but the truth is, when a superhero movie crushes it, we all wanna see more, no matter what logo shows up in the intro. And beyond how good each movie is, a huge factor in whether it does well at the box office and becomes a global event is the money spent on marketing. That's what gets everyone to know the movie is out and actually wanna see it. The superhero movie with the biggest advertising budget ever was Endgame. Marvel spent $200 million just on ads, and that helped turn the superhero genre into a massive thing. Do you really think Aquaman and Joker would have hit $1 billion if it hadn't been for Endgame? Even though they were set on different universes, those movies got a huge boost from the hype around the MCU. Same with Venom, which made $800 million when it came around the same time as Infinity War, but its sequels couldn't even pass $500 million. Here's the thing, no one spent $200 million on marketing since 2019. Deadpool and Wolverine only had a budget of around $125 million. Same with Superman. Marvel is saving up for Doomsday and Secret Wars, which are gonna be the next Super Bowl for superhero movies. And I wouldn't be surprised if the movies that come out around that time, like Man of Tomorrow, The Batman 2, or Beyond the Spider-Verse, actually hit $1 billion thanks to the superhero movie hype making a comeback.
I hope so.
But maybe that won't be enough, because of the second reason, the streaming wars. During the pandemic, the biggest Hollywood studios realized they couldn't rely only on movie theaters to survive, since theaters were shut down all over the world for months. After seeing how well Netflix was doing, pretty much everyone wanted to launch their own platform to keep all the money for themselves and not have to share anything with theaters. Plus, nobody really knew how people's viewing habits would change after being stuck at home for so long. Maybe folks didn't even want to go back to the movies at all. In the end, the post-pandemic situation wasn't as apocalyptic as they feared. Disney and HBO made tons of cash thanks to subscriptions on their streaming services, but at the same time, they shot themselves in the foot and hurt their own theatrical releases. Between 2020 and 2021, DC and Marvel got us used to having new releases, both in theaters and on streaming, at the same time. You didn't need to leave your house to watch Wonder Woman 1984 or Black Widow. You weren't watching some sketchy low-quality pirated version anymore. It was just like going to the theater, except you didn't have to pay for a ticket, parking, or overpriced snacks. And best of all, no more dealing with some idiot kicking your seat or some weirdo talking on the phone in the middle of the movie. So a lot of people decided to just stay home. That wrecked the box office for Wonder Woman 1984, The Suicide Squad, Black Widow, Tenet, Matrix, and a whole bunch of other movies. We're not even talking about hitting $1 billion anymore, just being able to break even from ticket sales.
Never been about the money.
Realizing that strategy was killing the movie business, Disney and HBO abandoned the simultaneous release model. But now, every time a movie underperforms in theaters, they immediately put it up for digital sale, and soon after on streaming. That happened with Shazam 2, which was available to buy digitally less than a month after it came out. Warner's doing this even with movies that are doing well, like Superman. The digital version came out on August 26, just a month after the theatrical release, and it hit HBO Max on September 19. If you're already paying for the platform, you only had to wait 2 months to watch it at home. That wasn't the case a few years ago, when you had to wait almost a year to watch a movie in good quality outside of the theater. It's really hard for superhero movies to hit $1 billion like they used to, no matter how good they are, because people know they can just watch it at home shortly after release. The only movies that still do very well are the spoilable ones, that you have to see on day one to avoid having the surprises ruined, like No Way Home and probably Doomsday. But great movies like Superman, The Batman, or Across the Spider-Verse didn't have that factor. So even if they were awesome, lots of people just waited to watch them at home. Maybe if streaming didn't exist the way it does now, those movies would have hit $1 billion. But we'll never know. And on top of all that, there's the third reason. One nobody wants to talk about. Every superhero movie this year came with some seriously bad baggage that hurt them even before they hit theaters. Let's start with the first one, Brave New World. For months, the internet was flooded with videos and articles talking about all the production problems the movie was having, and how the Russo brothers and the director of Moon Knight were brought in by Feige to try to fix everything. There were rumors of bad reactions during test screenings and leaked images of characters that didn't even make it to the final cut. Tim Blake Nelson even admitted that he had to reshoot all his scenes, which was already a bad sign before the movie even came out. Even though the Captain America franchise is a strong brand, a lot of people decided to stay home opening weekend and just wait for reviews and reactions from people they trusted to see if the movie was actually the disaster everyone feared. On top of that, the movie featured a new Captain America who became Cap in a Disney Plus show that not everyone watched. Casual viewers who didn't know about the behind-the-scenes issues hadn't even accepted Sam as the new Cap yet, because the last time they saw him was at the end of Endgame. So if you didn't watch his show, you miss his whole character arc, and the reason why he's the one holding the shield instead of Bucky, which means you had to do homework just to understand the movie's basic setup. You better remember this point because it's gonna be super important later. Things got even messier when Marvel decided to bring back ideas from a Hulk movie that came out 17 years ago and bombed at the box office. Don't get me wrong, I like The Incredible Hulk way more than the people at Rotten Tomatoes do, but maybe it wasn't the best call to dig up plot points from that movie for a Captain America film. If you add all that up and consider that the final product was just okay-ish, it's not surprised it didn't come close to Civil War's billion-dollar box office. But what about the movies that did get good reviews and people actually liked? Surely those didn't have any negative baggage, right? Turns out they did.
Is that so?
Thunderbolts didn't have any production issues or bad rep online, but it was a movie starring the Marvel legends that nobody buys. I really like Bucky. He's one of my favorite side characters, but if your most well-known character is Captain America's sidekick, you've got a problem. And all the others were either introduced in smaller projects or were making their big screen debut, like Sentry. Most people didn't even remember Ghost, had no idea who Valentina was, and didn't know who Walmart Captain America was either, because they hadn't seen Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Nobody wanted to remember Taskmaster, and even though I'd love for Florence Pugh to marry me tomorrow, her character was basically the backup Black Widow. I think Yelena has the potential to be even better than the original Black Widow, but right now she's nowhere near as well known as Natasha, since she debuted in a movie barely anyone watched, and then popped up in a Disney Plus show. Thunderbolts fell victim to bad planning on the corporate side. It was just a mashup of Disney Plus characters. But jumping from a show to a movie is not easy, especially without the massive promotional push Endgame had back in 2019. You can't even compare them to the Guardians, because at least those guys made their debut in a group movie, and you didn't need to watch anything beforehand to understand what was going on. The negative baggage for Thunderbolts was the Disney Plus shows. Again, you had to do homework to follow the movie, or at least that's what a lot of people thought, because the truth is, you can enjoy the movie without knowing any of the characters' backstories. You'll miss miss a few references at most, but the people who thought they'd be lost didn't give it a chance in theaters. They did watch it on Disney Plus though, because according to Nielsen's numbers, 5 million users watched it in the first 5 days after it dropped on the platform.
Oof, that's a lot of people.
But today we're only talking about box office, and in that department, the movie fell short. It didn't even hit 400 million. And believe it or not, Superman came with more negative baggage than the previous two combined. Sure, he's the most iconic character of them all, but James Gunn had to completely change how people saw the DC brand in theaters. The last few years of the old DC EU had done so much damage that people would literally run the other way if you try to talk to them about DC characters. I'm not just saying it, the numbers back it up. Out of the last 10 DC movies released before Superman, only one made a profit, and in the last 12 years, DC has only hit $1 billion twice. Not even glowing reviews, a big marketing campaign, or the best Lex Luthor ever could fix DC's image enough to push Superman to $1 billion. A week after the movie came out, one of my Marvel fan friends asked me if it was good. I said, yeah. Then he asked if it was good enough to see in theaters. I said yes again. Then he asked if I was sure because he'd been burned too many times by DC. I kept telling him yes, but even then he didn't go. He waited to watch it at home on HBO Max and he loved it. So now there's a chance he'll go see Man of Tomorrow in 2027. And he's not the only one. Samba TV reported that 500,000 US households watched Superman digitally in its first 3 days, and then 13 million worldwide streamed it in its first 10 days on HBO Max. The negative baggage didn't let it reach $1 billion, but just like with Thunderbolts, the people who had doubts ended up watching it digitally, and they really liked it.
Really very nice and good.
Plus, since the old DC universe was left hanging, and they recast the actors Gunn didn't vibe with, some of the last remaining DC fans weren't on board with this new movie, because they wanted Cavill's Superman back. Some of them changed their minds after watching the film, but others just didn't want to support Gunn, something that didn't happen with Brave New World or Thunderbolts. And First Steps was even in a tougher spot. Not only was it stuck under the shadow of all the negativity surrounding Marvel's recent flops, it also had to convince people that the Fantastic Four were cool and worth seeing on the big screen. The last live-action version of the team was one of the worst things we've ever had to suffer through, and it barely made 167 million. And sure, the 2000s movies had some fun moments, but they weren't exactly fantastic. They didn't come close to the numbers or cultural impact of Raimi's Spider-Man or Fox's X-Men. If the DC brand was wrecked before Superman dropped, then the Fantastic Four franchise was somewhere below whale poop. I know the team has super loyal fans who love the comics, and Marvel wouldn't even exist without the Fantastic Four, but they haven't been popular outside of comics for decades. Even so, the movie had a solid opening weekend in the US, pulling in 117 million thanks to Marvel's fanbase, but it lost steam fast in the following weeks, because casual audiences didn't give this new version a chance, mostly due to the bad rep the group had from all the past adaptations. If the Fantastic Four end up playing a major role in Doomsday and Secret Wars, and audiences start loving the team, then maybe a second movie with them could reach $1 billion in the coming years. But there was no way First Steps was ever gonna hit those numbers, not even if streaming didn't exist, and it came out 2 months after Endgame, because the franchise was just too damaged. And I know exactly what you're thinking. Why didn't I compare the numbers from Gunn's Superman to Man of Steel? Well, actually I did, and you can check that out in this video.